Did you know there are certain cities where I can book your home on Airbnb, refuse to leave, and then I'm immediately protected by state and city tenant laws? How crazy is that? Meaning I do not have to pay rent and you cannot legally remove me. And if you tried, you'd be held liable in court and have to pay me money. Now this dumb scenario is a real situation that I just went through because of one of these 10 backwards major cities that you must avoid if you're getting into the Airbnb and any type of rental investing space. Now, we'll talk more about these top 3 in a little bit. First, we have to understand how to spot these types of cities and how to avoid them. Now, you're probably a lot like me and you want a diverse portfolio, which includes real estate, Airbnb, and hopefully some land, which can create enough income for you to leave your day job, actually pretty quickly.
Is that so unreasonable? Now the problem though is always finding the right location to buy and then dealing with the ultimate bad guy of any good story, the overreaching arm of the government. And in this case, was the landlord-tenant laws. Now you won't believe how we escaped these stupid laws after 14 months of a guest squatting in our property. It was a worst case scenario where they completely trashed, abused, and wrecked the place. And due to the inept housing department of Oregon, specifically Portland, Oregon, our hands were completely tied. Now my partners and I had spent months and tens of thousands of dollars fixing up this amazing historical mid-century modern home, which estimated would bring in between $7,000 to $10,000 in gross revenues each month. But what we got was an utter nightmare where we had no idea or when we would be legally able to take back our own property.
The problem goes a lot deeper than just a bloated and ineffective government department though. You begin questioning your decision of investing in real estate and even despising the guests and tenants who put you in this position. And then you even start wondering, am I a bad owner? Am I a bad landlord? Should I even be doing this?
No, I'm f***ing awesome at this. And I have good conscience and morals. Honestly, any tenant is actually really lucky to have me as their landlord or host. And if you want to learn more about how I quit my job at 27 years old, which was about 11 years ago this month, crazy, by being an owner and host of unique rentals, just like this one here, register for my live workshop August 27th at 10 o'clock Pacific time in the morning. Now I hold these only about 2 or 3 times a year. I'll be discussing the state of Airbnb, the direction it's moving, how to start looking for the right areas to invest, and of course my bread and butter, how to start land hacking. If you're newer to this space or just want to get more info, this is a great spot to start. And there will be even a Q&A event so you can ask your questions and I'll be more than happy to answer it. Now you can register now with the link just down below or just head over to my website, kaiandrew.com.
Now, before I show you how an idiotic city can give people the power to ruin your home, these are the questions you have to ask yourself and answer about any city before you invest in real estate, long-term, mid-term, and or short-term. First, what's the temperament of the local government, especially the housing officials? Do they heavily favor tenants or landlords, or is it well balanced? Typically, liberal states and cities will favor tenants. Proceed with caution with these guys. Second question is, how are terminated leases handled? There are 3 key terminations that you must know of: no cause, for cause, and non-payment. What are the criteria for each, and how quickly can you get a person out of your home under each scenario? Third, how many days until you can evict? How many days until you can change rent rates? And then finally, how many days can you take action with notices sent? Fourth is, do I have to pay relocation payments? Yes, as ridiculous as it sounds, you as the homeowner have to pay thousands of dollars to help your guest or tenant move out of your home when you want your space back. Make sure that your city or your town doesn't require this like mine does. And then fifth, perhaps the most important, when are guests and tenants protected by law? Is it the first day? Is it the first month? 30 days? Or is it even 12 months? Protection can be staggered based on the time inside your space or inside your home. Now, once you understand this more deeply, you'll understand why you'll see landlords who will only sign 11-month leases or won't do midterm rentals longer than 29 days, like me. If that sounds like a lot, it can be. And that's why I had to hire an expert. Now, my landlord-tenant law attorney, Jason, has dealt with hundreds of cases similar to ours and knew that the pain that we're going through just because that's just the natural progression of our city. Now, he was able to give direction and legal advice for over a year as our squatter took advantage of every legal policy and loophole to squeeze out more protection from an illegal eviction. Now, during that time, they broke almost every lease rule that we had agreed upon, from trashing the property, illegal activity, property damage, and even a private investigator working on a missing girls case related to the tenants.
Oh, what the hell?
Now, my best advice in these situations is have the right people in your corner, even when everything seems stacked against you. The right business partner and attorney can save you a lot of time, money, and sleepless hours. Trust me on that one. Now, here are some of the most ridiculous laws based on the top 10 worst cities in the United States. Now, mind you, all of these cities have several other rental laws in place that are meant to villainize homeowners like you and I and landlords. These are just the most outrageous ones. Starting at number 10, Philadelphia. The city appoints a tenant a free attorney to defend against evictions, no matter how they broke the lease's rules. Number 9, DeKalb. You must complete a mandatory training course before obtaining a license to rent your home, and you cannot prohibit subletting. So, all of your renters have full rights to sublet to whomever they want. Number 8, San Francisco, the city with the worst cap rates in the entire United States. You can't non-renew tenants without just cause, which basically means that you have to renew the lease with every tenant unless you've documented some violation and gone through a termination process. Not liking a tenant or their habits is not just cause. Number 7, LA. Is anybody really surprised? California? Come on. Tenants who want repairs or upgrades can contact the Central Housing Authority or department, and they'll send out an inspector who will then tell homeowners what they have to do. It's a super fun process, as it sounds. And then number 6, Chicago. Tenants can break their lease agreements and move out early. What kind of double standard is that? Landlords will be taken to court if they did the same thing. Very interesting. Number 5, Detroit. You can't hold violent felonies against applicants. Seems like you're creating pretty safe space for people. Number 4, Baltimore. Non-paying tenants have several ways of delaying eviction to a year or even more. And then finally, we're breaking into the top 3, starting with Washington, D.C. Owners must comply with a law on how many tenants can live in a home based on the square footage size of the bedrooms. A very unique way of controlling landlords and homeowners. Number 2, New York. Again, surprise, surprise. Landlords cannot start the eviction process for at least 30 days while tenants are allowed to cure the violation. This literally can range from throwing massive parties or having 10 pets or illegal habitants inside the home. They have 30 days to show that it's no longer there and they can stay. And then number 1, Portland. Virtually all the other rules on this list applies to Portland. On top of the fact, if you opt not to renew a tenant's lease agreement, you have to pay between $3,000 to $5,000 to the tenant to help them relocate. Now, Portland is where I got started, and I can personally attest this is by far the worst city to work with and invest in. Working with our attorney, Jason, he'd constantly say to me, no good deed goes unpunished. Because all of the times that we did things in good faith to help the tenant or other tenants in other properties make things easier or system, it actually can be used and came back to be used against us because we didn't file the right notice, didn't do it in the right amount of time, mail it in the right format, or we just literally didn't document something even though a tenant admitted to breaking the lease rules with photos, evidence, and witnesses. There are so many laws and bills that are constantly changing that everything becomes a moving target. That's why our tenant was able to stay for 14 months without payment. Really, Portland? You used to be way better. Ultimately, Jason guided us and we filled out every form, application, and notice legally available to us. The only thing that we legally could do then was to document everything and wait it out. Literally document how the tenants were breaking every lease rule and then just kind of had to wait. Now, during this time where the tenant had a cat living inside the home, which was already against lease rules, ruining the couch, furniture, and using our expensive rugs as litter boxes, which we have now rolled up in the garage or had to throw away. Now, you're probably like, oh wow, well Kai, at least justice was finally served after 14 long months. No, because of the landlord-tenant laws, it was actually supposed to drag out for several more months. The only way that we got this property back, this home back, and why I'm sitting in it right now talking to you about it is because she died. The tenant had to die.
for us to get our property back, leaving her equally inept 19-year-old son in the home, which further trashed it and damaged even more stuff in it. Now, here's the lesson that will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars and lots of headaches. Avoid these cities and any others that seem to be moving in a similar manner. Now, I'm probably the least political person you'll find on YouTube. I honestly dislike the far right just as much as I dislike the far left. They muck stuff up and then they look around and wonder why their communities are in disarray. But did you catch the one thing that all of these cities have in common? All of them are hyper-liberal cities. And I'm not just talking about slightly more democratic, with the exception of DeKalb, Illinois.
Wait, who's ever heard of that city? DeKalb, Illinois. Yeah, it's got a population of about 43,000 people. Sorry, DeKalb, not what I would consider major. But I'm talking about hipster coffee shop on every street corner liberal. Now here's the thing, I know how these cities are thinking. I was raised in one of the most liberal cities in the world and have had several properties in it. The government thinks that they're doing the greater good for the people who they think are the less fortunate. But in reality, what they do is open the doors to people who rely on a broken system to take advantage of principled homeowners and landlords, which leads to the larger question. With all of this protection, why do states like Oregon, Washington, and California still face massive housing shortage? The answer? Because people like you and I, the investors, builders, and entrepreneurs, leave these cities and do not come back. And they are not incentivized, again with like the low cap rates that we see in San Francisco, investors and entrepreneurs are not incentivized to go back and buy property or invest in those cities. Now, I personally have unloaded virtually all of my properties in these areas and am down to a small handful. I'm taking my money and my experience somewhere else. But I'm a mere drop in this proverbial ocean. My friends and other investment firms who owned literally thousands of doors, they sold their buildings, properties, and other holdings and got out. And even with all the tax incentives, major investment funds and private money have blacklisted the city of Portland. So what does this do? It's obvious. It deepens the housing crisis. The solution is always provide a space for principled entrepreneurs and investors. The government is almost never the sole answer to any problem. Looking at you, Portland. You need good business owners, entrepreneurs, and builders to create a well-balanced city. Once you kick those folks out or you incentivize it against them, guess what's gonna happen? You have this.
There's a lot of conversation around homelessness here in Portland and other parts of the Northwest. And what researchers have found is that it's not necessarily addiction or mental health, but rather a combination of high rent prices and a lack of affordable housing. It's a crisis plaguing Portland nearly everywhere we turn.
Want to help avoid these cities? And if you can't, vote out these delusional people who end up hurting the people they're trying to help. So, what's next for the property? Well, it needs a little bit of a facelift, as you guys can see. And we'll get it back on Airbnb and limit who and how long people can book it for. Now, a relatively close neighbor of ours with a very similar style home has been grossing over $8,000 a month. Considering that the mortgage and taxes is only around $3,500, this can still be a great investment. And if you're ready to start looking for your next investment in land, property, and unique rentals, join us for our live workshop August 27th, this Saturday. And it's seriously only $9, and you get to spend a few hours with me asking your questions and learning all about what's happening next in the world of real estate and short-term rentals. Link below or check out my website, kaiandrew.com. Now go watch why the perfect storm is brewing for Airbnbs everywhere.